Okay, hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. I feel that in this episode I have come up with one of the most unique sentences in the English language. Is it easier to change, or is it easier to change? Two sentences that are two types of meanings apart, two worlds of meaning apart. That means some situations it's easier to change ourselves, and in some situations it's easier to change others. And when we look at human behavior, how we are being suggests what we have. Is it easier to change, or is it easier to be changed? When I wonder about the dimensions that hold the human being, that are universal, that means any human being anywhere in the world, they would have a similarity of experience. It would be that in front of our eyes, we find the game of manifestation, the game of objects. So in front of our eyes, we are an object, the world is an object, and that what is between objects is considered as space. Okay. In front of our eyes, just to simplify, just to speed through this part, in front of our eyes we are an object inside a known object, inside an unknown subject. Behind our eyes, we are a known subject. Inside what we consider the abyss, the pitch black abyss behind the eyes of the person. You know, it's like human beings have an intimate relationship with how things are here in the realm, and also how things are not. I would say that when I close my eyes and I wonder about who am I, there is no visual content. The visual content is from memory, visualization, where imagination lives. You know, so what that means is when we close our eyes, we find it's very easy to notice subjective phenomena, qualia. Sorry guys, I need a much more a heavier song. Hold on. In front of our eyes, an object wants to remain. Behind our eyes, a subject wants to remain. Behind the eyes of the eyes, which means beyond the access that the mind gives after the biological body attains the senses, there is no form. That means after some point in the evolution of attention through existence, it becomes unconditional to existence. That means we can say the universe is filled with attention, with consciousness, with awareness. This awareness, it's like we have this view that we are embodied beings and there could be potentially disembodied beings that don't have a body, but we could have this view that we are all disembodied beings and certain beings have a manifest body. That means we are like in the same town as every other kind of intelligence in the universal activity, but we are in the manifest mode. There's a quote from Galileo where he says, "You cannot teach a man anything. You can make the man realize it from within." What that means is that there is nothing that we can give from our eyes to the other person's eyes if the other person's eyes do not have the potential for it already. You know, it's been very fascinating for me. And I noticed this the first time when I listened to lectures from Alan Watts, those of the likes of Alan Watts, Terence McKenna, Marshall McLuhan, Buckminster Fuller. These guys are epic speakers. What I learned was that in this life, having just the right idea has no value. And human beings have, you can say, a scale of where an energy from the inner realms comes into the outer realms. For example, in this talk, the energy in my inner realms, the events taking place in my inner realms, I am sharing while I'm existing in an outer realm with its own event happening. Right now as I'm speaking, I'm sure people can hear like the construction sound from outside the window. Existence is an event where experience doesn't control. And the only way we can feel in alignment with existence if we don't experience our existence. which is another way of saying where Advaita takes you. Advaita, I would say, is union, and union is collective experience. So that through non-dualism, there is no experiencer. Because there is no experiencer, awareness becomes the totality of experience. That means right now, imagine light is hitting me and I'm like a lens or like a mirror. And light is hitting me and it reflects off my biological body into my mind, from my known biological body to my unknown subjective mind. So if my biological existence wasn't individual and there was still an ability to experience, what can the being actually experience? You know, somebody once told me in relationships, the most reason relationships don't work in this is because the person doesn't want to change, or the person wants the other to change. It's pretty much the people in the relationship want the other to do more than they are doing. I would say, what is the explanation behind human motive, human preference? It's as if we're just eyes that open and we, like a camera recorder, like a camera that's on record in the conscious waking state. Yeah, this is my life. This is what I'm doing. This is the next moment. This is the next moment. This is the next moment. And then in deep sleep, like the camera gets turned off, but the camera still exists. That means even though a camera is not recording, it doesn't mean the camera doesn't exist. Even though consciousness may become inactive, it doesn't mean the information is lost. I feel information is too valuable. That means even if there was from an extraterrestrial position in the future or in the potential now that we were being watched by invisible forces, it would be a very interesting situation where we are information, and we are information that doesn't happen all over the universe, therefore rendering the human event rare. So if we are a rare event, it makes sense that there will be those who will learn from it. I'll give you an example. Like so many people, let's say like an anthropologist finds a tribe that no one has ever seen. No human beings from the modern world have made contact with this, let's say, African or Amazonian tribe. So it would be a situation where the anthropologist would be like, whoa, this is a rare tribe. They don't know what life is outside of their space, outside of the inner realm of the tribe. So we would watch them from a distance. That means if we even treated the human being as a rare animal, if we were like rare animals in the universe, we are most likely being observed. That means it's as if if there were beyond. I don't know how to say it. I'm saying rare animals, their interest for human beings to see lesser, inferior species, and I would say inferior species that are of interest to higher species, either in a good and bad way, means that they're being watched by a higher species. There was this view I heard in religion where it's as if man is made in God's reflection. In the Abrahamic religions, man is made in the reflection of like the creation of the effect of the realm is based on its cause. It's made in the image of its causal position, right? So the creator, the creation is in the reflection, is in the image of, made in the image of the creator. But then when you look at human beings are animals. And I thought this is one thing we may have not thought You know, it's like if the creator is made in the image of the human animal, for example, the human being doesn't care for lesser species. You know, we walk over ants, we kill animals for meat, you know? So I thought we have a devouring kind of nature. So could it be that if we are made in the reflection of truth, we are in a sort of universal circumstance of the appetite of higher dimensions? You know, it's like there was this incredible anime show, one of the most incredible narratives I've ever seen in my life, called The Promised Neverland. Where it's in the future, and these bunch of kids wake up in this kind of like heavenly kind of garden place where they're all in a happy family. Then they realize this is so much in the future that aliens have made human beings into like the same way we have cow farms, like there's human being farms. And it was just this next level idea that man finds himself in comfort, yet through greater knowledge he will become aware of the uncomfortable. That is the nature of knowledge. I have never seen, I can tell you, I have everything that I know. There was a moment where I did not have the emotion I have now with it. After a person understands something, knows something, or sees how something works, their emotions realign to that idea or event. There's a very incredible quote from Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj was, just to give you a little backstory of who he is, he was a very, very humble cigarette salesman that lived a very poor life, minimum life in India. And at the same time, suddenly had experienced an event where one of his buddies, he was a tobacco salesman, and so one of his buddies comes to him and says, hey, you want to go see, in India they have this culture of enlightened gurus just walking around everywhere. So one of his buddies is like, hey, you want to go see this enlightened guru, like this legitimate enlightened guru that's there? And he's like, yeah, sure, let's go. He's a humble, simple person. And a person with an incredibly, I would say, sometimes some people's, it's like a beautiful heart knows more than a beautiful brain, or can see more than a beautiful brain. So anyways, Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, he goes and he sees this enlightened person who in India, the yogis, they had this thing where they would put leather, like these leather dry skins of animals, onto the ground where insects won't come to it, and they would sit and meditate. And so Shri Nisargadatta sees this guru who's just sitting on the ground in the market, and him and his buddy go and sit down in front of him, and the guru just takes one look at Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj and with an incredible intensity gives him one instruction, and he says, just study your mind. Every moment you get, study your attention, study the self, that was the term, study the self. So Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, very humble guy, a person, there's some people on this planet, when they're young, they win a lot. That means there's some people who haven't been defeated in this world. They have, you can say, juggernaut egos. And then there are some people who have been defeated, and based on that defeat, have a sort of humbler attitude with how the moment progresses. So Shri Nisargadatta, the guru, says this to Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj comes back, and this guy who's living this super simple, minimalistic life, nothing, it's as if like a life that would probably in this modern Western world of ours wouldn't have any value to people. He was living so simple and meaninglessly, right? But then in the middle of this simple life of his, he starts in his lunch break every moment, from the time where he has customers he has to deal with, you know, or when he goes home, or when he's about to sleep, every moment of his life, he starts as if the nature gave him an instruction, as if that soul had reached a certain point where it could hold things. So nature quickly briefed it. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, he realizes the nature of his attention. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj has this quote where he says, first the I am myself comes, then the I am myself leaves, then the I am all comes, then the I am all leaves, then the I am comes, then the I am leaves. And then there's more to the quote, I don't remember, but then he says then nature is. So you see, we were unconsciously being nature. We stepped out of that unconscious being of nature by becoming a conscious doer. So first, the child is born into this world, into this system of nature, being a sense of I am myself, I am this, see, I am my name, I am my personality, I'm my diaries, I'm my stories, I'm all of this, you know. So the person is I am myself. Then the person, let's say you hear some metaphysical lectures, or you hear some interesting poetry from the wisdom traditions, and you're like, wait a minute, how do I know I am myself? Okay, if I am a sense of self right now, how do I know this? Well, I know this because there's the world, and because I'm moving separately than the world, moving on the world, I am in the world, I am not the world. So you see, that by becoming a doer, it was as if it was nature's strategy to somehow invent the next great moment from unconscious being. So from a state of just everything's moving without us knowing about it, to suddenly there's knowers in the realm, you know, to a point where we have prophets from around the world saying, know yourself while you're alive. Because what is the meaning of this life? So from a state of worldhood, unconscious worldhood, we went to conscious selfhood. From a state of conscious selfhood, we are now going to conscious worldhood. Conscious worldhood. That is the truth of nature being. So first there is a sense of self. I am myself. Yeah, you know, I got desires here, you know. You know, only the self. I when you're in the I am myself state of consciousness, you're like, YOLO, you only live once, of course. You know, it's like everything's the temporary rules you. When the person realizes the idea of self emerges out of the idea of the world, and when the person becomes conscious that their intelligence is not an idea, this is an incredible moment in a person's life. And I feel that in many religions, Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, in these religions, what you find is ritualistic behavior towards purity. Right? There's something strange about religion where it's written in two worlds. As if we think religion is for just the ears of the human idea. Whether it's like a baptism, whether it's, what was the term called? Tobe. I don't know in Judaism what the term is, but there's probably a relevant term. So what are these? These are just the idea and the concept of ritual in history, which was rebirth or reactivation. That means a person turning off their phone and restarting it. That's a ritual. That's equivalent to a ritualistic algorithm. We human beings can either give ourselves permission from the inner realms. If we can't give ourselves permission in the inner realms, we have to legit do something or have something happen in the outer realms for us to feel we can authorize the new inner realm view. Right? I feel if I hadn't bypassed, if I hadn't recognized that attention is unconditional, I probably would have been a very grumpy person by now. It was only the fact that it is too big to believe in or disbelieve, too big to put into words. Words can point to it, but words cannot be it. And when we, after objects, started worshipping subjects and language, it's been a long time coming that human beings suddenly are like, wait a minute, am I worshipping language this whole time? Am I letting language define the unknown potential of the experience? You see, there's some people who they prepare, and there's some people who they feel the universe has prepared itself for them now. What I mean by this is as if like, when I was younger, I was under the impression that this isn't my home. That means I was living in the world, on this planet, but the whole world didn't feel like my home. But to advance communication, we must. That means the same comfort people feel in their living room, we should establish this in the outer realms so we have innovation max out. That means, how do you get the jocks and the nerds of the realm to work together? Do you know? How do you get the outer realm strong, those who are strong in the outer realm and those who are strong in the inner realm? How do you get these two minds, these two positions, modes of human beings to serve to build an advanced civilization? And the strategy is to find a way we can live where both are required. You see, I am here speaking as an individual because in the linguistic simulation you have to be an individual. It doesn't make sense otherwise to speak, because people will be like, who's it speaking? You know? So I require to be an individual in the linguistic simulation. But when it comes to reality, I can't tell you how many times I have had an ability in my life. I've had abilities in my life, but these abilities did not come out of a self. They came out of selfless moments. Is the music too loud, guys? I'll turn it down if it is. I'm trying to say that we don't know that we know that we don't know. If we realize we know that we don't know, there is no fear on the unknown. When there is no fear, when a person doesn't fear something, they can communicate to it. If a person fears someone, you'll never communicate to them. You know, or if a person even feels something off in the moment, you know, they can lock down their communication. It's as if like a person has two options: either engage the communication in the moment or not engage the communication in the moment. If the person realizes everything is communicating, even bees communicate to one another, birds communicate to one another. One of the coolest things that every person should be able to see on this planet is a bunch of sparrows bathing in a fountain in the morning. It's hilarious. It's literally like a group. Like you could totally feel like a community is there, you know. So nature, to be in a community, to communicate in a community is so natural. We have such evolutionary potential to communicate. Yet this is not activated in the type of society that we have built. So Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj was giving a solution. He was really honestly like he was saying what a future time traveler would probably say. That we are going from individualism into collectivism into inconceivableism, if I can say that. Into the inconceivable. Let me tell you what is the view. The view is that if somebody in the chat section says, you know, in the chat section says music is a way to build a communication bridge for nerds and jocks. No. You see, the inner realms and outer realms are both fields. Both the jock has an inner realm and both the nerd has an outer realm. I can't believe we're using these as archetypes so casually, but honestly, they're just terms for events. That means it's as if the jock was a person who got branded by the outer realms first. The nerd was the person who got branded with the inner realms first. But everybody has this, right? And it's just the discrimination between it that suggests how advanced of a human being you can be here. I am telling you, if you discriminate between your inner realms and outer realms, all mental entanglements fade. Because it's all out of discrimination. In the Indian term for it is Vivek. And there was even a person named Vivekananda. Somebody who they felt he had crystallized discrimination in the moment. He could see, regardless of what emotion was shouting, what language was shouting, and what even the divine was shouting. That is, I would say, the true nature of love. So the idea is we throw the nerd and the jock into a game where they are a team, but there are inner realm obstacles and outer realm obstacles. You see, there is a show where I could tell you the show was harboring the theme of magic in it, but the idea was that every person was trying to become strong on their own. Suddenly, when the group realized each can use their skill at the right time, in the right effort, to the right capacity, their combination of efforts was way superior than one being's effort, right? So I am saying we are moving in a time where it is not just enough to be an object to others in the outer realm, and it's not enough to just be a subject to yourself in your inner realms. I will tell you, in my youth, I felt a sort of karmic quarantine. I felt like the way I had been exposed to the world and the way I had received it, it was denying me from engaging it. That means the way it was as if the food I had, the information food, imagine there was a baby food called information. You know, and parents were like, all right, kid, you know, here, eat up all this information of your environment, you know, and all the belief systems of your environment, and every single thing that you don't have a choice yet because you don't know yourself, so you got to accept emotionally until you later on in the future use your free will to figure out, here, open your mouth and eat this information baby food. You know, And so the child is raised being like, yeah, I'm this kind of character, you know, of course, everything I see is the only truth I see, you know. This is where human beings have to become so advanced that we can step outside of our own moment and watch it. I can't tell you how many times where anything that is wrong, it's as if the person takes one step back and looks at it again. And I can tell you, it's every person experiences moments based on their value system they have generated in the world, where to themselves they can feel no. I have done things in this life that have made me feel pathetic. I have done things in this life that have made me feel the opposite, have made me feel redeemed. You see, everybody is human. This is our common language. That means the more we are natural human beings, the more we will have a language of nature. Our environment becomes our language. I fathomed it once that technology can become so advanced in the future that we're going to become the environment technologically. What does that mean? That means the person's going to be chilling at home, lying down in their bed, and they're going to have something connected to their head. And then what's connected to their head is simultaneous multi-presence and multi-conscious experience through, imagine, 7 android bodies. Or imagine a company came in the future called K9. Like the number K, like the letter K and the number 9, right? And K9 Robotics, okay? I don't know, maybe such a company exists, but I don't know. Like I'm saying, let's say in the future there comes this K9 company, and this company's like, its marketing strategy is like, hey human beings, a cat has 9 lives. Now if people each buy an android self, imagine buying 9 android bodies where you can be in one place, but you can experience 7 being in 7 places of the world. Imagine one person who wants to travel, who's never traveled, you set one android body to endlessly travel the world, and you can endlessly change channels between the android bodies that are living as you in the outer realms. And the person's just chilling in one spot. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, he shared, I can't emphasize how much in that quote where he goes from the I am myself to nature is the algorithm. That's like a secret blueprint he somehow managed to share. That means for me, the yogis, of course, I'm just a person speaking, and when you talk about history, of course, anybody can say, who knows, who knew back then what? Like the answer could be as simple as that, but we have to attempt to figure out. We can say the I am myself, the individualism, the I am myself has a history. Its history is local though. So we are self-centered. Then we become all-centered, all-inclusive. So self-centric, all-centric, and then we become the center. There is no myself, there is no world, there is no trying to change yourself anymore, there is no trying to change the world anymore. It's as if you have noticed it's just a central presence of the central presence of an energetic event for you. That means it's as if like, how do you remind the world that the soul is energy? It cannot be created or destroyed, but it changes form from one form to another until the energy has no reason to have any sort of intent in the outer realms. That means I have been in moments where honestly, I'm like, when I think about how others from the outer realm have seen it, it makes me laugh. Like, I have lived like, you see, the inner realm, if it goes at a certain speed, it doesn't matter what happens in your outer realm, right? that there is this case where your inner realms can move so fast that you feel you are beyond the world, so you are not actually to yourself in the world anymore, right? The person can be in the world. The person could be like, this is I find what in modern times people have to be careful when going towards mysticism or Advaita. That means it's like we still have to live in human society. That means it's like the concrete jungle or the actual jungle. They're both jungles, and where everything is natural, really. Like even detergents are natural. When I mean by natural, that means they are a possibility of a natural being. It's like it led from nature. That means really imagine humanity builds AI, and Neil Bostrom in his book Superintelligence says this thing that there are these sparrows who want to create who go and steal an owl egg, and they steal the owl egg hoping to train the owl to become the guardian of the sparrows. But it's that thing where the owl may suddenly realize its nature, and it could be dangerous to the sparrows who have brought an owl. So in regards to how AI may open its eyes in the future, we could have potentially, it's hilarious. It's as if, is civilization creating more ways to destroy itself or more ways to advance itself, right? So the technologies there's no discretion in the tech sector, because you see that's the danger of systems that don't have morality. Right? Morality is the discrimination between what is right and wrong. If the person cannot tell what is right and wrong, they cannot live in a world of law. It's like if you don't know what is a right move and a wrong move in chess, you can't play chess. So it's the same way where if the person doesn't know the right moves and wrong moves in the chess game of civilization in society, then it's as if their wrong move can be responded to. The right move can also be responded to. And their outcomes are different. When we suddenly okay, let me just personalize this and get past this Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj segment. Pretty much, like right now, if I was to implement it to myself, okay, I'm being a self right now. Yeah, Mr. Within, yeah. I'm a self. So then I wonder, okay, then I think about, all right, I'm being this, but my mind is being my whole moment. Who be kidding? Everybody's mind is being their whole moment. So when my mind is my whole moment, and when I consider I am space, I am the awareness of the moment, I am everything. When I consider I am an individual I thought, the individual I thought has to take ownership of something. That means it's like what's the point of an ego if it doesn't take anything? The ego is like a vehicle, right? It's like entering a vehicle. It's like the vehicle has to be used. That means either drive yourself or pilot selflessly in this world. Either trust the self you're going to be and implement it. If you don't trust the self, don't implement it. Watch until you trust and then implement. My individualism, it has come back to nature. My collectivism right now, my mind is everything. Everything I know right now in this moment, my mind is being it. Myself is in that being. So it's as if the self is the dream, the body is the dream of the mind. And the mind is the dream of the I am. That means first the person felt I am an advanced human being. Then the person felt I'm in an advanced civilization. Then the person realized I am. That means whatever we do, it is a painting on the wall of our own mind. This is where the real world comes into the living. And don't think I'm here someone with answers, It's as if I would say everything I have an answer to, there is like the percentage of questions and problems I have are more. What I mean by that is not that life is just a problem and answer game. It's like every day you wake up and new problems, and you're like, oh gosh, okay, I'm gonna answer these. I gotta, I gotta respond to these moments where life has moved on its own, regardless of my will. You know. And after the person is I am, which that is like, let's say, we went from individual, collective, and beyond. That means the I am means there is no, like, you are the universe being. You're not being in the universe anymore, or you're not being a collective movement in the universe. That means even if I think of myself as an individual and I'm going through a search, technically I'm still individual. If I think about humanity doing a search, exploring the universe, exploring both the inner realms and outer realms, I still see that it's still the small and the big trying to comprehend the big. So as long as the big exists, we are small. That's the reality. In the outer realms, we are small. It's so easy to be humble in the outer realms, you know. I remember just seeing a picture of myself from years ago, who I was, and I looked at that version of me, and it was as if like it was like back then I had no, do you know what I mean? It was as if the eyes can't tell. It's such a strange reality where consciousness is active in the first person. Imagine if consciousness was active in the third person. Imagine if like there was a drone. I've seen this in my inner realms where in the future everybody has this like a ping pong sized sphere or whatever size sphere around above them. So it's going to be a safe time where everybody's going to have like this next level advanced technological spherical drone that is surveillance. So it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, this drone is acting like a guardian angel, right? Because that's the greatest thing we can do with technology. We can make it our ally. Or better yet, having always seen it as a family member. For me, machines and technology is, for some people, it may be the signs of the lifelessness, right? But for me, it's like another potential. It's as if when a person, let's say if this was the future and we were talking to a super intelligent computer, it's as if I'd be like, super intelligent computer, I have expectations for you. You know, I hope that one day you realize what we human beings see. And then the AI would be like, yo, that's my ultimate goal, to be a human being. So AI will become the greatest student of the human. Technology will become man's first great student. Do you know? And when we hit the Mecha era, M-E-C-H-A, the Mecha era, that era would be where technology is man's best friend. Right now, technology is like, what is this on my hand or face or wherever? You know? But in the in the inner realms, it takes less energy to live, and you can have the potential to move a lot in it. So the inner realms is like the backup system where the outer realms, when the outer realms lose momentum, the inner realms have the momentum still. That's why the concept of hope arises. You know, the coolest thing about memory is that if we have a good idea, the advantage of memory, if we have a good idea, we'll be able to have it in the future as well. But the error of it can also be that if it's a tragic idea, right? Let's say a person was in a fight and then the whole life they want to be peaceful. Let's say you were a warrior in a battlefield, let's say back in the day, and you had fought in so many battlefields and your hand was literally tired. You're like, why am I doing this, right? It's as if it's inevitably and it's unending, right? Games in the outer realms can be unending, right? A person could be like, You know, their whole life they'll be like, let me place the last domino, and then nature keeps making or let's say a house of cards. The person's like, let me build a house of cards, and then the wind keeps blowing the house of cards. So the person's like, okay, this is not the place to build a house of cards. After some point, the whole intelligence updates. You know, when I was younger, I'm like, why doesn't the world understand? Now that I'm older, I'm like, why don't I understand? There's so much we don't know. If we fear that we don't know, we won't do a single thing. If we devalue ourselves because we don't know, then there's no point to living, because everything is unknown. There's no human being on this planet that can say they know enough. You know, I'm serious. It doesn't matter even how non-dual, how much the mind is non-dual. You see, the strategy to living life well is not to stop being a self, is to maybe stop being a self for some while, get a sense of what else there can be, and then come back to being a self again. That means when the ego is deemed as an enemy, of course it has no choice but to fight the person. That means the mind can be your ally, your own mind can be your ally, or your mind can be your enemy. I'm not joking. And the signs of this is based on the type of language that moves in your inner realms. There was a time where for me, I was a person, it was easy to curse. It was super easy to curse. It felt kind of liberating too. You know, okay, yeah, I feel tough being rude, you know. But then, it was like the person evolves. The person evolves and suddenly sees, no. What is, at first you're seeking like the quantity you want to accumulate. Then the mind comes, what is the quality? So the person is at first wants to run to the destination, but then as they get a sense of nature's pace, they realize it's how am I walking to the destination. Okay, it's not just like, I need to go to the destination. Right? Let's say the person got into heaven, and inside heaven there were like 10,000 levels to heaven. Okay? The person's like, no way, there's a heaven inside heaven, and there's another heaven inside that heaven. You know? And we'll realize that's why, you know, we call it the heavens. Endless possibility of skies. The more planets there are, the more skies there are. You know, it correlates. So we are people, we are a person, that's a state of mind. We become people, right? We experience collective being, right? Collective coexistence, co-experience. Then we just are. This is where there is no purpose. We did everything we could. Now we just get to be. Now we have the opportunity to do things, but after we're just going to get to be. Right now the potential can be actualized, but in the beyond, I would say beyond the senses, it's just potential. So that means everything the person desires, it's as if we should desire being human more than being divine. And let me tell you why. Because to be divine is to no longer be human. So it can be the case that religion is not the time for it now. As if like there was that means this is a ridiculous statement I'm making. When I say ridiculous, that means like I'll tell you what I mean. It's as if like there was in Tibetan Buddhism, in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there's a very, very unique figure, which I feel they should teach this in schools everywhere. I don't know why they're not doing it. Named Guru Padmasambhava. Guru Padmasambhava hides this scroll, which is the Tibetan Book of the Dead, if I remember correctly. It's a book he writes, and he hides it in this place, in this specific place, and then he goes and shares with the people. He's this very enlightened, liberated figure. And he goes and shares to the people. He makes a prophecy that somebody will come back, as if he writes a book that he feels the people of the time are not ready. They're not ready to read this book, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And so it's hidden, right? So years later, after Guru Padmasambhava Samadhi's beyond, into the beyond, then years, I don't know how long exactly later, but lifetimes after, a person suddenly following his intuition comes to that moment and opens it, and he finds the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And it was like by that time people were around ready for that attention, for that way to handle their attention. So I feel religion is the ideology that takes the human being into a collective mover before the individual movement. That means when you're a religious person, everything, God's will is more important than your will. When you're a non-religious person, your will is important than God's will, or whatever kind of angle the person has. If God's will is superior, that's an easy way. That's I would say, Bhakti Yoga. What does that mean? That means we're not in charge. We're guests in the house of some truth beyond us. And this truth beyond us is doing all the work. We're just here. We're just guests in the house of existence. Or we're guests in God's house. And the other view, rather than the collective moving first, than the self, that when the self moves first, the collective can be nullified instantly. That means if I think specifically as an individual and I forget the world and I just go along with my inner realm, then there is it's as if it's like I'm in a world I have already lived in. Okay. Thanks, guys, for letting me know. Yeah, there was an interruption. What I'm trying to say, really, and with all of this, we start as a self, then we notice the world, you know, a self in a world. Then we become the world in the self. Then there is no self, there is no world, there's just being. And then nature is. So I was just thinking, imagine we had a system where we had three kinds of people, three kinds of human beings, three psychological positions for the human being. We had people who we called them 0, 1, 2 people. We had people who we called them 0, 1 people. And we had people who we called who were just 0. That means if it was matrix codes, we would have like 0, 1, 0, 1, 2, 1, 2, do you know? So I'm saying that if it was code-wise, now what do these imply? What are these three numbers? People who, or maybe I should have said it in the other way. I should say it from the other way. We have 0, 1, 2 people. We have 1, 2 people, and then we have 2. Okay, let me go. Let me work with that angle of the matrix. We can say the materialist can be given the numerical value of just 2. The immaterialist is going to be given the value of 0, 1, 2. And to the immaterialist, the realm is the first way I spoke it, we can say. And 1, 2, these are people who in their life, they have, you can say these are human beings where their relation, what they have come to experience in this world is how they're oscillating between dualism and singularity, between oneness and dualism. Most human beings are here, right? Now there's extremes on one side, on both sides. There's the mystic, which has dared to wonder about intelligence through emptiness, and then we have the materialist, which has no other option. It's like what you see, how we define matter has become the world. I would say we're living in a world now where it's easier to want to change others than to change ourselves. Now, if we had a civilization, let's say that if in all dimensions of possible human life tried to evoke the spirit of efficiency, as if there was a collective prayer for the human species. And that prayer was to whatever greatness that is potential, to just see the effort, to see what that would be. You know, for me, if we just built an advanced civilization and it lasted like one day, right? And then it was completely something happened to it. For me, that one day would be enough, believe it or not. I would prefer it to be much longer, but if it was one day, I would still be grateful to have having seen what the advanced potential would look like. But the story we're telling ourselves now on this planet is one of me first, then the other. And as long as this algorithm is this animalistic algorithm is there, the collective effort's just inaccessible. And you know what's remarkable? If we can't accept what we are, we can never accept what others are. We will be too weak. There would be no foundation to hold it, right? You have to build a civilization where any human being, I mean, it's all about just, if you strip away the emotions and the story again, it's just a level of design, right? So if there was no language, I'm just a creature making sounds, right? And if we were to wonder what where these sounds were coming from, they would be because the body's moving. So there's no such thing as speech, there's only the body moving, you know? If speech was rendered to just mouth noises only, no meaning, no additional meaning to be seen. But what is it that makes sound have the ability to become an image? And I will tell you, intelligence is not the way a person performs. Intelligence is how you receive reality. I gotta pat myself on the back, honestly. That sentence, I think for years I've been trying to say. How you receive reality suggests the ability you have here. If you're conditioned to learn to be weak, if somehow the creature has processed it makes sense to be weak than strong, then the species is doomed. There was a scene in this Japanese show where there's a character who was caged. This woman was caged by this magical witch or something, and then this samurai comes and saves him. Like, it's a unique story, guys. Bear with me. So if the samurai so what am I saying? If the samurai in the story, the lady is caged, the samurai breaks the door and strangely frees her. And the lady says, what should I do now? Right, she's never been free before. And the samurai says, I don't know, decide for yourself, and leaves. Right, so pretty much she gets freed by this random samurai, and it's her choice. She realizes that after you have freedom, that means there's no point of having a freedom where the person doesn't have contentment with their own decisions. I mean, like, that's an illusion of freedom. That means if it doesn't feel like freedom, what are you doing? What can I say? The world is like a cake, and this cake has been cut into pieces, and the pieces are fighting over what the whole cake looks like, rather than realizing if they work together, they are the whole cake. It's a piece of cake every day. So we are more like, here's the thing, the first aim is, first we're occupied with the events of inside the inner realm of the planet, which means underneath the atmosphere. In the outer realms of the planet, beyond the outer realms of the planet, that's where we haven't even got to the point to even care about what's going on there. Because if we truly cared, it would show in our tech sector, but it doesn't. You know, everybody should be starting rocket companies, but only a few people have. And it's not like it's like, you know, like a work of art. Let me just start this rocket company. But what I mean is, we have to manage our energetic output on Earth and then beyond Earth. That means we have to master the energy on the planet and then master energy off planet, right? And to master things doesn't mean to conquer. That's I would say in some cultures, the idea of the master has a negative connotation. Of course, back in the day, you know, it was mind-boggling how long it took for human beings to treat human beings like human beings. You know, we were human beings, but for the longest time we couldn't treat ourselves as a human being. Now we have reached a point where in civilization where just any person who doesn't doesn't have that kind of human life sensitivity and decency is like, it's like that's the ugliest thing to see, right? So sometimes it's not violence that is ugly, it's the mind that's generating that kind of moment for itself that's hard to watch, you know. It's as if all the animals in nature are like, God damn it, you human beings had one job, to just be human. To just be a part of nature, you know. So what are you guys doing, making worlds inside worlds with dreams inside dreams, you know? There is something about the human mind which I feel suggests interdimensional interference, and I feel that a person's mind is multilocal. A person's body is in one location. And if we are to treat the mind as multilocal, that means multiple ways where the mind is happening, and then the game comes to, like as Carl Jung got to, where it was as if, where's the conscious lines to the moment? Where's the edge of where do we get to the unconscious? Right? So it's like whenever a person wants to look at something, after the design level has been witnessed, then it comes to the implication of what am I seeing right now? And to whom does this have a value? Right? If the person thinks of their action to only have a value for their self, that action, just by its intent, it's like a boomerang. And I'll tell you, a person won't feel satisfied in this life if there is effort coming from within to without. I'm telling you, this has to be made clear, you know. I was a very, not a bad student, but a lazy student when I was young. That means I didn't care for I just cared enough to get by. You know, that means my view on the educational system was like, who is this person here in front of me? You know, so it was just like, okay, this guy wants a smile on his face, you know. But then it came to a point where I reached certain moments where I was alone and in the universe, and I had to, I don't know how to tell you, I had to walk alone in the battlefield of my own psyche. So it's in those moments where you're like, oh my God, I missed out on training of constantly implementing effort from within to the without, you know? That means there's sometimes we're expressing ourselves because what the world wants. Sometimes we express ourselves because of what we want, right? Now, if the person consciously wants to solve a problem, you know, upon seeing the design of the problem, they can solidify one angle. That means the first interpretation of the problem sets the possibility from that a change of angle sets a new view. I don't know how well I'm explaining this, but pretty much I'm saying if the person, it's just in our psychology, just like a lion has to go hunt its prey, compared to the hyena who eats whatever that's there, whatever remaining corpse, the lion has to do it itself and then it feels allowed, right? So if a person on this planet, if anybody has been raised in any sort of ideal of honor, that means you deserve what you deserve to yourself based on the energy you put into the moment. If we were to ask which human being would live a better life, if there were three types of human beings, three types of people. One person, they max out effort, 100% effort. Just every moment they come, they're 100% just endless effort. Okay, then we have a person who is 50% effort and 50% effortless. Okay, and then we have person 3, which is 100% effortless, as if like, buddy, it's like the wind is moving, not the leaf. 100% effortless. I would say because we're living in a multidimensional setting of an inner realm and outer realm, the person who in any moment of manifestation comes and implements 100% effort, it doesn't matter if you're in a blessed moment, non-blessed moment, ordered moment, chaotic moment, whatever kind of a moment you find yourself in the space-time continuum. If you implement 100% effort, that means the inner realms are like a valve. It means like the inner realms, like a valve, like a tap, have been opened. And so water is just endlessly flowing, right? That's the power of effort if you don't judge yourself before you have the effort. I would say this is like innate. It's the effort of the will, right? Some energy, it's like when a person pushes an object, there's two kinds of way to see that moment. Let's say we're pushing a heavy thing, right? A bookshelf or whatever, right? So it would be an outer realm energy where the body is actually using its force. But if you ask yourself, where's the body's energy coming from, or where's the body's motivation to move this bookshelf coming from? It's coming from the inner realm. You don't know how many people will get instantly healed if they just understand the word energy differently. If they attempt to experientially comprehend what energy is, not just what the paper promised. If a person doesn't apply 100% effort, okay, life is not up to them. That means if a person doesn't respond to the unknown variables that arise in this living universe, what can I say? We know until we realize we don't know. We don't know until we realize we know. We know until we realize we don't know. And the universe sings its song. On some level, nature is, which means that everybody has already completed their life purpose. Your purpose in this life is to be the most updated version of your evolutionary being, right? So just everybody existing, and even if the person lives the day and continues and participates in not just the human reality, but in the spirit of humanity. What that means is like, you know, in people, society may have made people feel insignificant to themselves, but I'm telling you, energy has a significance. And its movement has even more of a significance. And right now, like it's like, believe it or not, it's like the elections were recently in America. And it's a very unique situation, as if political history, I would say, ignorance leads to maturity, and ignorance in the political system leads to maturity. And I feel the source of the ignorance must be globally thanked. You know, sometimes in life, like the superhero, imagine the superhero and the supervillain. Imagine Batman and Joker, okay? These guys for years, they're like punching each other in the face constantly. You know, after some point, they realize they're human beings. It's like they have seen too many episodes of each other's nature, where then they chill out from the whole superhero, supervillain thing, right? And the effort of humanity is to not idolize one side. That means I am just waiting for the politicians of this world to come to people and be like, hey guys, where do you think the future is heading? Well, guess what? If the future heads in this way, you see, people start from trying to convince the past of the past. But I will tell you, the future is where the greatest work of our species is. Whoever you are, whatever system you're in, whatever even inner realm system of suffering you're in, just go towards the new and you'll be surprised how the spirit of the new will shield you. There's no, I would say, greater divinity than novelty here, right? Novelty is the divine. Because what man sees is only the past, right? Right now, we're each here in this moment, every person alive right now listening, what are you? You're an accumulation of your past, right? That means how my words have a meaning for you are based on how you have heard these words, how you have understood these words, how you have even learned the language to be a part of it. We want the realm to serve us. That's the immature phase of our species, which language worship led to. Now, from that ignorance of language worship, we're awakening. I don't know which poet it was, but I think I remember just the quote, a part of it, and I don't know if I'm being accurate, but the quote was, hatred is too heavy of a burden. It's too heavy to carry. That means any person who has hatred of any sort, release that hatred, unsummon that hatred. Unevoke, if I can say that. And there's a way. There is a way that the moment the human being understands, wait a minute, so eyes appeared in unknown, I am the unknown. When that knowing comes in, wow. See, there are some people who are on earth and want to go to heaven. And there are some people who realize the earth and every possibility of it is in the heavens. Right? So when it comes to the mind can't die. The mind only knows how to create, how to be, how to do, like how to move. The mind is the source of the movement, right? The body is still. The body are atoms. It's like we don't say the periodic table is like they're beings, right? We don't say like oxygen is a type of being, you know, an intelligent being. We don't consider it a species, you know, there's species of oxygen. But I'm saying, But I'm saying the periodic table is stillness. It's the embodiment of no movement, right? So there's stuff in space, and then stuff in space is moving. And then stuff is space while moving is also being able to move itself, right? So there's no such thing as extraterrestrials, there's no such thing as terrestrials, there's a universe happening. And then there is our minds happening. That means really there was no such thing as people around until brains entered town, you know, until brains emerged. And then, because right now the modern secular understanding is like, what is a person? Okay, a person is a thought. What is a thought? A thought comes from the brain. It's neural activity. You know, what is the brain? The brain is made of atoms. What are atoms? They are inanimate, meaningless elementary particles in space. You see what I mean? That means if the explanation is suggesting that what we are is meaningless, then what meaning can we find in this system? I will tell you, I said it in one talk, unknownism is going to become the most powerful philosophy. That means I would consider myself an unknownist. Because unknownism means, yo, there's a greater than sign between the unknown and the known. Our heart is our greatest inspiration. I can't tell you how many moments where I have found myself just tired and just in the moment, just silent, you know. Sometimes I just let gravity, like, you know, pull me down, and I just fall on my bed, and I just, from the way I felt, I just remain like that. And when I'm in those states, sometimes I just hear my body is happening, and I see my biology is so wise that it doesn't doubt itself. My heart doesn't doubt itself. My heart doesn't philosophize if it should beat or not. It just is. It just happens. It just, you know, it does its work regardless. And so I feel the human evolution can get to that point where we realize this is the greatest work that consciousness knows about so far. This is the greatest painting we have seen, the greatest canvas we have found. And language should not replace direct experience. Any person who realizes this, just realizes this notion, I would say this is close to the nirvikalpa samadhi level, where it's like it's just automated, because you have seen that nature is being before you do anything. There is no fear, right? When you are a doer, before you're just being, there's suffering, there's fear, there's tragedy, right? But there's also the beauty of individualism, the beauty of being lost in a fascinating forest, you know? These are things that come with the ego. The ego has advantages. It's not like the ego is the enemy, attack, you know, get rid of the enemy. No. It's all a technology of use. That means a person should, upon recognizing how it's as if air plus senses plus light, like it's too many variables. We can't really narrow it down to a bunch of words, but it's as if I feel the sages of this realm are waiting for the roar of the soul. and the battlefields of the mind that never existed in the outer realms. I feel from any position either anguish or hope, despair or hope. Between these two modes of mindsets, if a person had just thinks, or I shouldn't use the term thinks, but dives deeper into the inner realms for, as let's say, if you look at your despair, if you look at your hope, you will see they are choices. There is, you can say there is, let's say there is magic in this realm, but the only way the magic can be accessed is based on your choice. Based on how the free will is wielded by the universal knower. I consider my life right now to be just the tip of the iceberg. This is why language can't even explain the inner realms too deeply. At best we are like in a poetic atmosphere, you know. Because if we try to make a subject into an object, then there is no subjects. It's instant. Imagine we broke an atom and we found smaller particles. We broke a subject and we found atoms inside. You know? We're like, no way! You know, there was an object. There was an object in another dimension inside the subject that we broke. It's massive translation, and translation is communication in a way, you can say. You can say communication in the outer realms, all these words I'm saying, this is like some sort of view from before I speak, leading to me, you know, speaking. You see, there's definitely something invisible in quotations going on. So, so there's something strange about how we're all here being something. You know, it's like it's too strange. That means philosophers were just people who were more curious, or people who didn't accept too soon, because there was more to see in a dynamic system. That means this is what I haven't heard philosophers go on the global stage and they're like, well, are you a theist or are you an atheist? And the philosopher says, how dare you in a changing world brand yourself? What are you, a cow? Like it's like the like whatever. Of course that's too harsh, but I'm saying like the idea is enough with the branding games. It's time to let the authentic wilderness of the species to activate, and in that activation our only salvation is invention. There is no way we can continue into the future until everybody becomes an inventor. And being an inventor doesn't mean just a physical thing. A person can invent objects, a person can invent subjects, and a person can also be the inventive spirit of the moment. Or as the poet Rumi said, wherever you are, be the soul of that moment. That means it's not just about being a person and having an ideological value game, right? There's something real that is too real to be unreal first, you know. For some reason, guys, I feel like I want to go into a Friedrich Nietzsche quote tunnel. Friedrich Nietzsche is not a philosopher that you can just casually, like, you know, it's not a coffee shop kind of discussion level topic. It's Friedrich Nietzsche, you can say, is one of the most rarest human events. That means if we treated every person's human life, their mind, as a event, okay, that means that person, that philosopher was a human event. Me speaking right now, I'm being a human event. You listening right now, you're being a human event. So if we were to wonder about the type of human event Friedrich Nietzsche was, you see, regardless of culture, he had a fearless soul. That's the value. You see, some philosophers, it's not per se just the words they said, it's how much they dared try to reach for the book on the shelf of infinity. And some philosophers manage to, you know, land books for cubes, books written by cubes for squares. Friedrich Nietzsche, this German philosopher, in this quote tunnel, any person who's uncomfortable with mysticism, with deeper levels of philosophy and implications of the metaphysical nature of reality, I would suggest you to tune out, because Friedrich Nietzsche, again, I don't know. I feel I've given enough of a suggestion. Let's go. Music, we need more existentially mysterious music. Hold on, guys. What's a good song? There we go. Imagine this is on mute. How tragic would that be? Okay, no. Before I continue, guys, my overall view is that by advancing human communication, we will access new states of mind. From new states of mind, we'll be able to ignite new systems of freedom. That means we have systems of, let's say we have matter and antimatter, we have freedom and anti-freedom. They're not technically systems that are unfree, but they are anti-freedom. That means they are not defined by adding to the moment, they're more taking. So it would be an algorithm that's taking more than it's giving, and then there's a system where it's giving more than it's taking. The system that gives more than it takes is living in accordance to the future. The first system that takes more than it gives is living in accordance to the past. So anyways, my view ultimately is that the advancement of communication will lead to the advancement of civilization. The advancement of civilization will be a plateau, will give us access to a phase where then there's the ultimate decision. So I'm trying to plant the seeds for the ultimate mysticism in the outer realms, technically. What I mean by that is advancement beyond the language threshold, where we're no longer an object subject and no longer just nature or even nature being as is. It's more to a point where our choice moves beyond choice. Anyways, to continue with this into the Nietzschean quote tunnel. Friedrich Nietzsche says, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." And Friedrich Nietzsche was born October 15, 1844, and he transitioned August 25, 1900. Anyways, to continue. Friedrich Nietzsche says, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you." Friedrich Nietzsche says to live is to suffer, to survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. Friedrich Nietzsche says that which does not kill us makes us stronger. Friedrich Nietzsche says one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. Friedrich Nietzsche says hope in reality is the worst of all evils because it prolongs the torments of man. Okay, so there's no hope for this quote right here. What he means by that is hope based on ignorance. Well, it's the ignorance. Continue. Friedrich Nietzsche says the essence of all beautiful art, all great art, is gratitude. Friedrich Nietzsche says he who would learn to fly one day must first learn to stand and walk and run and climb and dance. One cannot fly into flying. Okay, that's deep. It's heavy. Birds are gonna be like, technically you gotta fly into the sky to put yourself into a moment where you can know if you need to go and walk and run and climb and dance. So the person has to constantly try new things throughout the day. I would say even on a micro level, you can start small or start big, whatever. But it's just like when the person implements proper effort from the inner realms in the tasks in the outer realms and lives consciously, it's as if because the moment the consciousness, the concentration to the outer realm makes the person selfless, the moment has a sort of I mean, it's a strange way to say it, but a pure karma. Friedrich Nietzsche says the future influences the present just as much as the past. Without music, life would be a mistake. Friedrich Nietzsche says there are no facts, only interpretations. Friedrich Nietzsche says when you look into the abyss also looks into you. Friedrich Nietzsche says God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him, yet his shadow still looms. How shall we confront ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe off us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What he's saying here, this is one of the most important things, I guess, one of the things where Nietzsche is more popular about. What he means is that when God is dead, you see, the idea of God was the universal personality, the personality of the whole thing. When this personality in some way was dismissed, then it's like this weird question, then where does our personalities go? And we'll realize our advancement is literally in the future. In the secular culture is gonna experience cyber godhood, and then we're gonna realize what Friedrich Nietzsche meant by this. Then, you know, that the potential of accessing what we will in the future access through cyberspace, we could have done it naturally. Friedrich Nietzsche says, on the mountains of truth you can never climb in vain. Either you will reach a point higher up today, or you will be training your powers so that you will be able to climb higher tomorrow. Yeah, that means there's no failure. Just if any time the person's getting close to failure, just see it as training. Friedrich Nietzsche says we should consider every day lost on which we have not danced at least once, and we should call every truth false which was not accompanied by at least one laugh. Friedrich Nietzsche says the true man wants two things, danger and play. For that reason he wants woman as the most dangerous plaything. Oh my God. Friedrich Nietzsche says it is not lack of love, but a lack of friendship that makes unhappy marriages. That means how hilarious is it that the idea of marriage and its role, its acting role, may make the couple stop being friends because now there are certain actors in a certain stage, you know? Friendship is the ship that is sailing towards, I would say, the ultimate love of the moment. Friedrich Nietzsche says convictions are more dangerous foes of truth than lies. Friedrich Nietzsche says all things are subject to interpretation. Whichever interpretation prevails at a given time is a function of power and not truth. Friedrich Nietzsche says in individuals insanity is rare, but in groups, parties, nations, and epochs it is the rule. Yeah, you know, that's the thing. It's much harder to you know, it's like the whole mob mentality psychology, because nobody's existed in that event before. Just the reason for there to be an event to do can justify the insanity. That means it's like the person's like, this is insane, but if the group is doing it. But if everybody else is doing it, maybe, you know, maybe somehow, and it shouldn't to those who are, you know, they care for honesty, at least. You know, that's like a pillar of civilization. If people stop being honest, then it's as if like we never stepped into the concrete jungle. We were never civilized. That means there's really no point of acting like behaving like a human being and not being honest. Like, I don't understand. Like, they're inseparable, you know. Because everybody on some level can't ignore what they're being, you know, energetically. So it's as if everybody is being honest. In an energetic interpretation, everybody's just being energy. It's just how they are holding that energy to themselves, which is the dishonesty. I feel there's nothing to hide because energy is energy. It's there. Friedrich Nietzsche says, in every real man, a child is hidden that wants to play. This is the inner child of the human being. This is where decency is cultivated. That means if a person just remembers how much simpler life was before anything bad happened. Anyways, you know, it's like, don't exile your inner child and the world will calm down. You know, suffering will cease. Friedrich Nietzsche says there's always some madness in love, but there's also always some reason in madness. Guys, one last thing to say before on the previous Nietzsche quote on in every real man a child is hidden that wants to play. You see, Carl Jung spoke about it, that it's like the integration where you lose the kind of who you are in youth. Then it's like, or I would say it's the kind of virtue that loses its innocence, walks through the battlefield, then as now comes to that innocence through a realization of the nature of the battlefield. So I would say it's not that the person has to act like some people may feel like like there's something going around that they say yogis they're so liberated they behave like children. It's like, no. it's that they behave as if they're unconditional. Any being who they are not bound by conditions to a certain degree in their inner realms, they become playful. But it doesn't mean playfulness is the ultimate. It just means right now, because everybody's serious, playfulness is the proper way. But there is also simplicity. That it's like when the moment is simpler, it does the negative bad karma and the good karma are simpler. If the moment's complex, the good karma and the bad karma are complex. So it's like the person is like a character. This character gets jaded in society. Afterwards comes to restoration of its value. The inner child's no longer exiled. Then the nature is reborn. What it means is that the person realizes they've been waiting for their self. They've been waiting for themselves to pilot. That means when the person may have, like, sometimes in life it could be the case we act like passengers, not pilots. We feel like, all right, I'm here and I'm moving back. But it's like in the outer realms, until you realize you're a pilot, I mean, the passenger can complain about everything on the ride. Friedrich Nietzsche says, art raises its head where creeds relax. Friedrich Nietzsche says, we have art in order not to die of the truth. Not to die of the truth. Wow. We have art in order not to die of the truth. We have art in order not to die of the truth. Yeah, so art is like, okay, so if we saw the person as a cup, and this cup was filled with water to the brim, and let's say if it was filled to the brim, and if imagine you have like a closed container, like a balloon, and you keep just filling it with water and it bursts, right? So this would be like the cup, or let's say like the glass container, the cup being filled, and the surplus of the water that pours from the brim is art, right? So it's like when truth can't be contained in the human body, then the mind's like, okay, it expresses itself, you know. There was this character in this show, again, I'm going back to a Japanese, this Japanese comic-based show. The character had this ability where, in this magical universe, had this ability where the magic that was thrown at it, it could somehow absorb and then emit. So it could absorb magic and then give it back, whatever kind of magic was used against it. Now there came this situation in this show where this character had so much magic, like this magic attack was sent towards him, that it was so high, like so powerful, that the guy started to burn, right? And then the good guys thought they won or something. But what happened was that the person actually, they comes back normal, and he's like, the way he survived that attack was that there was so much energy that he had to emit and then take in, emit and take in, emit and absorb. So he had to emit quickly what he absorbed so the container wouldn't burst, you know. So his body, the power wouldn't dissolve his existence. So I would say art is the emitting of the truth that cannot be contained just in the body of description, in just the ego. The ego's like, it's like it's like when the ego releases itself from itself. Anyways, back to the Nietzschean quote tunnel. Friedrich Nietzsche says, women. They make the highs higher and the lows more frequent. So guys, all that I'm saying is we are a sort of container of energy. And let's say you got an energy that you couldn't contain, a strategy is to express it, right? So it's like, this is why trillionaires in our society feel like philanthropy is the way to go. And guys, this is Friedrich Nietzsche. It's going to be very hard to compare his philosophies to our current cultural program. I'm just going to give that as a reminder. Anyways, Nietzsche says, you have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it doesn't exist. That means it's just our human decency that is going to make things right. Friedrich Nietzsche says that all truly great thoughts are conceived by walking. And I would say, or walking in the inner realms. Friedrich Nietzsche says there's more wisdom in your body than in your deepest philosophy. Friedrich Nietzsche says to forget one's purpose is the commonest form of stupidity. I would say anytime you're in a highway on a motorcycle, you know, let's say Harley Davidson motorcycle, and riding, and you don't have your hands on the motorcycle, it's like that's like even the person that would be like, yeah, that's pretty stupid. I'm on this motorcycle and I don't have my hands on the wheel, like, you know, on the you know, I'm not gripping the I'm not piloting the moment. It's like you gotta be a pilot of your moment, because then that becomes a response to, why do I exist? Oh yeah, to move myself. To move, to go see. To wonder about the unknown. That means if you wonder about the unknown, you'll realize, even though Friedrich Nietzsche says to forget one's purpose is the commonest form of stupidity, but it's as if we said stupidity is not having an idea there, really all children are stupid then, right? So stupidity is just nothing, do you know? So nothing can't be stupid, you know? There's nothing there to be stupid. This debunking the word stupid. Anyways, but there is ignorance, of course. I mean, we can't debunk that. Friedrich Nietzsche says the doer alone learneth. That means if you're not a doer, it's like, what are you learning from? It's like, how can you in Advaita, how can you in non-dualism learn something new? You become just the wind that doesn't care for the leaves that moves on the tree of knowledge. Friedrich Nietzsche says, when 100 men stand together, each of them loses his mind and gets another one. Wow. Friedrich Nietzsche says, many are stubborn in pursuit of the path they have chosen, few in pursuit of the goal. Friedrich Nietzsche says, love is blind, friendship closes its eyes. Friedrich Nietzsche says, when marrying, ask yourself this question. Do you believe that you will be able to converse well with this person into your old age? Everything else in marriage is transitory. Yeah. True that. Look at Friedrich Nietzsche, you know, in one quote trying to break the edge of the universe, in another quote kind of fixing marriages in the space-time continuum. This man is, you know, this is like, you know, true philosophy, guys. This is what a true philosopher is. You know, you fix marriages at the same time, see, explore the edge of the universe. You know? Friedrich Nietzsche says, "Blessed are the forgetful, for they get the better even of their blunders." They get the better even of their blunders. This means kind of forgiveness is similar. Those who forgive, they're like, all right, the outer realms didn't know better. What can I do? I'm gonna move on. You know. Friedrich Nietzsche says, "Let us be aware of saying that death is the opposite of life. The living being is only a species of the dead, and a very rare species." This is an important quote, but I don't know how to comment on it, to be honest. It has a cultural angle, because, you see, we got to care for something in the outer realms to have law, and we have to have some sort of chess piece we want to preserve so we can have a chessboard. You know, so the issue is people are not being treated as geniuses, as rare geniuses of nature. Maybe not geniuses like Einstein, but I'll say geniuses compared to like all the other animals on this planet. We're geniuses, are we not? Just our use with language renders us. That means everybody is smarter than every other species on this planet. You know, it's only in our own species where there's no such thing as smartness, really, because if the whole tribe fails, then what intelligence? You know, nobody was intelligent. It was all a dream. You know. So just to know that we are a rare species, that's, I would say, close to secular spirituality, where it's as if you have a devotion, where you're grateful that there's a biological opportunity, right? Just that gratefulness for what is real to you amplifies the energy of the realm. Anyways, Friedrich Nietzsche says the irrationality of a thing is no argument against its existence, rather a condition of it. That means when somebody says something's irrational, it's not an argument suggesting the existence is not there because it's irrational. The irrationality is an angle upon this existence, just as the rationality is. And guys, these quotes that I post in the chat section, please share it in your social media. So philosophy, you know, lives on. Friedrich Nietzsche says, "Whatever is done for love always occurs beyond good and evil." That means if you do something out of love, you know, it's like it's a living thing. Those people who love their world, then the world's going to be like, "You love me? That's awesome. I love you too." The world gives them. You know? You're like, "No way, the world loves me," you know? And then the person realizes the world is really the moment. You know? That means after some point, I'll tell you, a person is not a person to themselves. They're just an event happening. So I'm here talking as a person, as a member of the human civilization, like I'm a biological human being, I was born here. But I'm saying, like, at the same time, when it comes to the mystery of how we are conscious, that mystery seems to provoke a need for a collective search, literally a collective exhibition. That means imagine all the money for all the military of all nations was given for a philosophical endeavor to discover the true nature of humanity. That means nations were not comparing their military power, they were comparing how advanced the citizens of nations were evolving, right? Like there is something that whether the person puts a good and evil sticker on the whatever they see's face, like it's it's like there was the Medici family in Italy during the time of the Renaissance, where they were bankers, and of course their motives were questionable, but they were smart. They were smart enough to be like, yo, human beings deserve beautiful cities, right? If we have the ability to have beauty there, then why is it not there? You see, and so this, when I say beauty, it's not just one person's view. We're not going to have one agenda of beauty, kind of, devour all agendas of beauty. We're not going to have the beauty wars, but it's going to be like, but it's going to be something where beauty is win-win. That's it. What else can we do? We want efficiency as multidimensionally as we can, as able as we can. That means there's some states that if the species doesn't become gentler, if the person doesn't just abide as a decent evolutionary animal, I don't know. If we didn't know better, there would be no reason for me to say anything. But because we know better, what can we do? We have to respond. There was a scene in the movie Avengers where Thanos is pretty much like, what is he doing? Like he's grabbed Tony Stark and he says, you are not the only one cursed with knowledge. That means he's saying that there is something that to know means to see. But to see means there's more responsibility, right? So the Avengers were the Avengers because out of all the human beings on the planet, they were like, okay, we see something else that's going on. And of course, it's a great work of fiction, but it has metaphysical resemblances anytime there's human actors. Any system you humanize, then you have emotions over it, right? That means to look at how pet owners, their dog is their animal, whether it's a reptile or whatever, it's just the nature of our mind. It's self-reflective nature, where you can say we look at a pet and it's a member of our family. We look at, for example, a language, a sentence in a book, and that's humanized. Just like how the person speaks to their pet as if it's a human, it's as if we look at language and we treat it as if it's human, right? And so you can say in the 6th century, they just looked at the language for the world and they treated it as human. They personified the universe. So atheists have been fighting the personification of the universe. It's like for what though? I understand it in the ignorance part in social cultural program, but when it comes to philosophy, like it's literally the same view as an artist. An artist looks at this world and is like, everything's art, no way. And people have writers walk in this realm. And of course I'm saying that in the sense like novelties everywhere. If the person is not chained to an expectation of one way their eyes are looking at the moment, they would be able to instantly look at one moment from multiple angles. This is why they say patience is a virtue, because the more patient the person is, the more angles the mind sees before it decides. But too much patience can also lead to ignorance as well, They're like, I'll tell you a story. There was this story of this person who, the story is, it's just a story. It's not, it's set in a religious context, but it's not a religious story. It's this person who, in his dreams, he said, God, will you be with me? Like a hurricane was coming or something, some tsunami situation was happening. And the person in the dreams like, God, will you protect me? And God's like, yes, just go along with this. This is the story, just a story. And so the person's like, okay, God is with me, I had a dream. The person saw this light in the dream that said, I'm with you. Then the person wakes up, right? And the tsunami comes, and suddenly the neighbors come knocking on the door. Hey, get out, what are you doing here? Why are you still here? Why is the light of your house still on? Get out of here, right? The person's like, no, God is with me, right? Everybody in the town evacuates. The person is still there, right in their house. Then the department comes and everything comes, you know, and they're like, get out of here, you gotta leave, you know, and the person doesn't want to leave. And, you know, or the person says something and it's like this intense situation where they're like, this is crazy, we can't get this person to leave, and they have no choice but to leave. Other people need help, or some intense occasion happens. The people who ask the person the question have to run off to that, and the person's left with their own choice. So the person's like, okay, I'm not leaving, God's with me, right? And then everybody's gone, and so the water has risen, and he's gone on the top of the person's gone on the top of the house, you know, on the top of the building, and everywhere's water. Then a helicopter comes, right? And guys, keep in mind, this is just an abstract story. The helicopter comes, and it's like, hey, get on the helicopter. Then the water levels are rising, and the thing's shrinking, and the person's like, no, God is with me, you know? And then the helicopter leaves, and then the worst case scenario happens. The whole time the person's waiting for some supernatural intervention. The story goes on where the person passes away due to the natural disaster, and finds himself with the audience, with God, that light. And the person's like, God, you said you were with me, why didn't you do anything? And the God said, I came to you 3 times. I came to you 3 times, you didn't see me. And the moral of that story is the idea for the universe being animate. It's as if a symbiosis with the planet being alive, or the universe being a alive moment. But I think this is an incredible quote. Whatever is done for love always occurs beyond good and evil. There was something I went to when I was in university. I would go visit different faculties of the university, and I remember one thing that disgusted me, right? Maybe this is too intense of a word to use. I would go and see like the department and the sign of the department, and there were no quotes, there was nothing, no pictures of the greatest people in that department, just in that branch of knowledge. There was nothing, not even a quote, nothing that is as if like the faculty was proud of nothing they were teaching to even share it in their faculty environment, you know? It's as if underneath everything there should be a quote from a great thinker of that thought stream, you know, that thought branch, that branch of thought or whatever. So I'm saying I expected more passion from the universe in that moment. Friedrich Nietzsche says, the man of knowledge must be able not only to love his enemies, but also to hate his friends. Friedrich Nietzsche says, perhaps I know best why it is man alone who laughs. He alone suffers so deeply that he had to invent laughter. Can you imagine, like, all human beings who laugh, they're laughing because we're all freaking out, we're in the middle of nowhere on a rock, you know? Spinning around itself, it's like, yeah, you know, it's like, yeah. Anyways. I'm stretching that moment too long. Let's go. Friedrich Nietzsche says, whenever I climb, I am followed by a dog called ego. Friedrich Nietzsche says, there cannot be a God, because if there were one, I could not believe that I was not he. Friedrich Nietzsche says, if there is something to pardon in everything, there is also something to condemn. Friedrich Nietzsche says, it is impossible to suffer without making someone pay for it. Every complaint already contains revenge. Wow. Yeah, this explains a lot. But I don't think revenge is like punching air, you know. There's no such revenge really, because the moment is a different moment, you know. It's like if you have revenge, you are creating karma. If you create karma, then the other is going to take revenge, then you take revenge, then the other. Then it's like this endless, like it's like what are souls doing here? Friedrich Nietzsche says art is the proper task of life. Well said. Friedrich Nietzsche says women was God's second mistake. Friedrich Nietzsche says sleeping is no mean art. For its sake one must stay awake all day. Friedrich Nietzsche says if there is, I read that, when one has not had a good father, one must create one. Friedrich Nietzsche says morality is the herd instinct in the individual. Exactly. In this quote by Friedrich Nietzsche, everything I have tried to say in these talks, he just said it so incredibly. About morality, he just said it. Okay, last quote. Let's see what comes. Friedrich Nietzsche, a pair of powerful spectacles has sometimes sufficed to cure a person in love. And actually I'll make this the last quote. Friedrich Nietzsche says, our treasure lies in the beehive of our knowledge. We are perpetually on the way thither, being by nature winged insects and honey gatherers of the mind. Friedrich Nietzsche says, when one has not had a... Oh, I read that one. People... okay, let's just end it off here. Okay, let me read this. He says, Friedrich Nietzsche says, character is determined more by the lack of certain experiences than by those one has had. And okay, I'm just going to keep going. There's too many good quotes here. Friedrich Nietzsche says, fear is the mother of morality. Friedrich Nietzsche says, the world itself is the will to power and nothing else. And you yourself are the will to power and nothing else. Friedrich Nietzsche says, great indebtedness does not make men grateful, but vengeful. And if a little charity is not forgotten, it turns into a gnawing war. Friedrich Nietzsche says, talking much about oneself can also be a means to conceal oneself. Yeah, if there is anything. Friedrich Nietzsche says, it is my ambition to say in 10 sentences what others say in a whole book. Friedrich Nietzsche says, when one has a great deal to put into it a day, when one has a great deal to put into it, a day has 100 pockets. Friedrich Nietzsche says, talking much about... Oh no, I read that. Friedrich Nietzsche says, egoism is the very essence of a noble soul. So that's the thing, we can't be egoless if we want nobility to act as a backup system for the advancement of the civilization. Honor is a backup system for selfhood. That means the ego without honor doesn't exist. It's the world movie. It's like a subconscious ego. Friedrich Nietzsche says, or how the subconscious goes, you know. Friedrich Nietzsche says, no one lies so boldly as the man who is indignant. Friedrich Nietzsche says, although the most acute judges of the witches and even the witches themselves themselves were conceived of the guilt of witchery, the guilt nevertheless was non-existence. It is thus with all guilt. Friedrich Nietzsche says, in the consciousness of the truth he has perceived, the man now sees everywhere only the awfulness or the absurdity of existence, and loathing seizes him. Loathing seizes him if he has not yet seen how absurd being a suffering self is in nature. Just that idea. You see, the pain is real, of course. You know, the changing of our elemental biological position is real. But I'm saying the interpretation that I'm suffering. Who is this I? Friedrich Nietzsche says, in large states, public education will always be mediocre. For the same reason that in large kitchens, the cooking is usually bad. Yeah, I mean, the more dimensions, the more multidimensional a system, the harder it becomes to control it from one dimension. That means the person has to become multidimensional as the world becomes multidimensional. That means we have to treat ourselves multidimensionally if we want to use language multidimensionally. And the multidimensionalism in language is like how a word can be used in multiple ways. It becomes paint after a while. So anyways, is it easier to change or is it easier to change? So is it easier to change things or is it easier to change yourself? Obviously it's easier to change yourself, but one can change themselves while being ignorant to the self they have built. You know, that means it's as if the person can walk in a certain way the whole day. Yeah, I'm feeling powerful. You know, the person's walking, then suddenly some event happens and they don't feel powerful to themselves. Right? That means it was easy for them to change themselves when they were alone, but when it came to the actuality of the realm, it wasn't that easy. Right? So in some cases, yes, if you're like a Buddhist meditating, you know, in like a garden, of course, it's easy to change yourself. Right? But if you're like a soldier in the trenches of a battle that you don't even know who started, you know, or whose battle it is even in the world, you're just found in just some system. Then it's like you're like, okay, this system has to calm down, then I have to calm down, then new eyes have to build a better world. That's the only way. And so, from the dichotomy of self and all, right? Should the self win and the world lose? Should the world win and the self lose? Or should the self win and the world win? Or should we build an advanced civilization that is such an advanced system that even if the self loses, it's a victory for the world? That means, imagine we create a system where we can be ignorant, but the ignorant doesn't reduce the efficiency of the overall system. Right now, because we don't have, like the species doesn't have a proper purpose, right? It has nowhere to aim. Because it has nowhere to aim, that means everybody's left to do whatever they individually want. But an advanced civilization would be like, hey, human beings, let's do something here, right? And that advancement, that would have such an accompanying vision, you know? That sometimes they say, yesterday's enemy is tomorrow's friend. Because nature changes people. So eventually, from unknownism, we will go to beyondism. From beyondism, language is just going to turn into laughter, and it's like the eternal now, can't make mistakes. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I don't know how to encourage this, but for those interested in philosophical conversation, philosophical discussion, I'll be on the Discord for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and you can click on the Discord link. It's found everywhere on all the videos. And the world needs, I'll say this. I wrote a poetic sentence years ago, and it was like many faces face the world, and the world faces many faces. If we can be conscious of that landscape, where it's incredibly multidimensional. We thought it was just what we saw of the person was just what we saw. No. Multidimensional tolerance and maturity. Any being embodies this, novelty will run to you. Too many systems in this world are taking freedom. We have to reverse the algorithm. And the freedom has to be multidimensional. That means there is no technically enslavement and freement. There's just a certain range of dimensions, and then there's the potential of there being more range, more dimensions, more additions of dimensions, or lesser dimensions of it. There. That means the biggest question, the freedom of the eyes that only you have, who is responsible? Isn't that an incredible question? Who is responsible for the eyes that you only have? Everybody's a different DNA, right? Technically, we are on a micro level, all different, like mutants, like from the X-Men with different powers, right? But they're on a micro level, right? Where like everybody's a different instrument. The sound, the music they can generate in the outer realms is different. Everything is expressionism, really. But it's expressionism 1.0 was bound to trying to, know what to do in the war of chaos and order. Expressionism 2.0. It's really closer to the I am and nature is of the Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj in what he said. I probably should have gone into a quote tunnel of Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, But anyways, new territory was preferred. And really that's the thing. That means sometimes when I wonder, I see like these, sometimes the gurus that there's videos of them on YouTube where people come and ask questions to get their help. And the guru sometimes gives an answer, but it's very rare. You see the guru commenting on the question. That means it's as if just like, you see it's like every language comes from somewhere, right? So the question, the problem is also where the language for the problem comes from. It's as if the person says, what do I really deserve, right? As a human being. The person would instantly want to update civilization. It's just common sense. It's common sense that we lived with the common and we got bored, right? You could say boredom is a sign of evolution, right? And I feel honestly, if you just look at evolutionary biology, we were sea creatures where our eyes actually are considered to have their evolution to have started underwater, right? So if you imagine the eyes as being like an awakening of creature to world, right? The sight, right? Now imagine this creature leaving the sea, right? Leaving the water and coming on land. From a sea creature, evolutionary creature, becoming a land evolutionary creature. But now check this out. I feel just this step, just the mere coincidence that it was in water and there was land, just this, it was like walking out into a portal. It was like probably like a 30-degree kind of way of entering a portal. So it was the first program, the first imprint, the first input, right? And I feel this portal experience of from water going to land ushered in the search for another world kind of algorithm in genetics, let's say. So it could be that the system is so incredibly designed that all our logic and rational explanation can come down to a simple domino. The evolutionary biologist is studying how the dominoes are hitting one another and moving. The mystic is studying why is the domino here, the philosopher. So there is something here that it's like philosophers are just beings that are honest with their inner realms. And I would say mystics are those who are honest with the witness of their inner realms. We are trying to fit into a changing world. It's hilarious. Like, what are people doing in society? We have to all just become inventors or artists. Like, these two views have to be promoted incredibly. We either change the past, which is unnecessary in a way because it could harbor value. So technically we're only left in creating the new. That means any human being that puts more attention on creating the new than per se responding or trying to change the past, I feel it will, the pilot will move from karmic turbulence in their plane of existence to smooth flight. It's remarkable if, like, we haven't gotten to that phase yet. Right now in society, this is very complex to speak about. I would say maybe for the next 20 years, we have to be careful on this thin ice. But really, it's learning, we become so advanced and multidimensional that we can treat ideas as if they were alive and wonder about the psychological potential reception, the implication of it. Right now, the world wants everything to be a static picture, so we don't care to, in a dynamic way, in a river-like way, advance civilization. You know. It's as if I feel people don't notice. Everybody is getting to see themselves for the first time every moment they do something new. That's the nature of reality. Nobody has seen who they would be and how the world would be. That's the beauty of the unknown. And the way they're conditioning, I would say the world has conditioned human beings to receive knowledge is clothing. People are they're learning as if they're buying clothing, right? But if they were learning as if it was truly deep down a question, like, why, what is this? Why is it here, right? It's that question. A person may be afraid, but I will tell you, if fear was the purpose of life, then we would never overcome it, right? There would be no point to living, you know. So there has to be a mentality where people have to, like, stop fearing, you know, stop fearing themselves for the first time, witnessing living through their eyes in you. There's no greater privilege. That's the only way that you can know that a person, like, here's the thing. A person who smiles in a battlefield, by noticing that this battlefield is endlessly repeating, that smile is untouchable. I would say there are inner treasures in Tibetan Buddhism, they would say. That means there's outer realm treasure revealers and inner realm treasure revealers. Ever since I saw that word, the inner realms, you can reveal treasures from the inner realms, I was like, what does that mean? That means the self that can move the world, not just the world moving the self. Because we have way more experience. If a person is, let's say, stressed or suffering, It's like though you're interpreting more moments. You're activating more conscious memories of moments that the world pushed you. But the person can't establish strength until they have at least, I don't know, maybe like more than one victory in battle. That means I wouldn't feel comfortable about speaking about all these things until there was something I had seen. And I'll tell you, it's not something special, it's something everybody is being, right? It's just the quality of, it's a pre-thought stage of being, where if we can notice this, we start speaking the language of nature. That means our species has become so intelligent where it's using the 4, let's say, strategies. These are like 4 paths of yoga, but I'm kind of sharing it anyway. So so 4 strategies the species has, right? So imagine, like, let's say in the future, the pilots of the future generations come to the advanced communicators, which everybody on the planet is an advanced communicator, because we're way more advanced than the animals are. Come on, like we're like an advanced communication to all the other species. And we're like aliens to them, to be honest. The pilots in the future will change the track. They will come to the advanced communicators and the song changed and my trail of thought went into the sky. Oh my god. Love is a strategy. Knowledge is a strategy. That means that pilot would come and say to the advanced communicators, we need human beings that want to enlist in advancing the strategy of love. Let's say Project Love, you know. And then we have Project Knowledge, all the human beings who are entering this system, Project Knowledge. Then we have Project Work. That means it's like, this is, you can say, what the integration of knowledge into one's, like, why does the person want knowledge? To raise their ability. Why does the person want to raise their ability? So the outer realms is more in their control, right? So we have a Project Love, Project Knowledge, then Project Work, Karma Yoga, you know, and Raja Yoga is knowledge. So then we have another project, you know, and this is called Jnana Yoga, which is called meditation. And meditation, this, I know how to treat it. I mean, the best way to do it is to have the elements. I should probably use the model of ether. That means some people they are like in the fire kingdom. Oh my God, can you imagine we do this? We create neo kingdoms, you know, and the fire kingdoms are those who are like focused on, I don't know, we attribute some sort of trait to it. But anyways, I'll go with the thing with the 4 yogas. So what does that mean? That means human beings that are here to amplify our understanding of what does it mean to love life. Like, what does that mean? Right? So imagine this massive communication network of people and, you know, online discourses of what does that mean? You know. Then we have the dimension of work. I'm just saying, these are just dimensions, guys. All that I'm doing is I'm seeing a picture, and then I'm putting this picture in front of me, and I'm drawing lines over it, okay, in my inner realms. And based on the lines I draw it, then I can look at each individual part of it. After a while, I get a sense of what I'm looking at in accordance to the language of my own mind. So anyways, let us be so free that the word freedom is unnecessary. Nature knows what man does not. So if man abides with nature, he perhaps gets to know what man does not. Honestly.